Welcome back, Wanderer. Tonight, you're not here for just a history lesson. You're here for something messier, something murkier. So dim the lights. Let the chill in the room settle against your skin. If you've got a fan, let it hum, not too loud, just enough to carry you back to a time where comfort didn't exist. And tell me, where are you watching from? A quiet apartment? A late-night study? Wherever you are, you're about to be pulled into the dirt-caked, half-rotten world of the 14th century. A world where survival came second, and staying clean. That was pure fantasy. Let's begin with the morning. Not the romantic kind, not the ones with sun rays kissing dew-soaked meadows, but the ones that smell of rot, echo with coughing, and start not with a stretch, but with a grimace. You've made it through another night on a straw mattress that's more vermin than stuffing. Your skin itches, and the cold has crept into your bones like a quiet thief. But something else is knocking now. Nature. And it's not knocking gently. There's no bathroom to shuffle into, no porcelain sanctuary glowing under warm lights. What you have is a wooden bucket behind your lean-to hovel, maybe tucked behind some half-rotted planks and last season's mold. It's already full. Someone got there before you. Uncle Wolfstan. He ate something last night. Bad turnips. The smell is indescribable. You try to hold your breath, but it doesn't help. You're in it now. This is the ritual. The moment in your morning that reminds you, you're not a human being. You're an organism on a tight leash. You crouch, you hurry, you pray. Then you stand up, muscles aching from cold, and you do what you were taught. You grab the sloshing contents of the bucket, lean out your tiny window and shout, "Gardy-loo!" Not because you care, really, but because that's what your father did. That's what everyone does. And just like that, a gallon of last night's regrets arcs into the narrow street below. It joins a parade of filth, human waste, horse dung, spoiled ale, rotting cabbage, and something else. Always something else. What's in that puddle exactly? Don't ask. Just don't step in it. This is the street, this is home, and this is normal. Maybe you're luckier. Maybe your village has a public latrine, a wooden hut built over a pit so foul it could kill a crow in midair. You go there, side by side with strangers. Privacy is a myth and the smell is a punishment. But hey, at least you're not dumping it yourself. Small blessings. You sit shoulder to shoulder with a baker, a butcher, and a man who won't stop making eye contact. You don't speak. You just exist. Try not to breathe through your nose. To wipe, there's straw, sometimes rags. Moss if it's dry. If you're rich, maybe wool. If you're poor, maybe nothing. And when you go to shake hands later, remember that. If you were born into power, into stone walls and heraldry, things aren't much better. The castle's guard robe is a long drop into the moat below, a hole carved in the wall, cold wind licking your thighs, a vertical escape route for your insides. But here's the problem. Moats don't flush. Moats sit, they fester, and sometimes someone climbs back up. A desperate intruder, a quiet assassin, or just a brave fool who knows that a castle's weakest point is also its stinkiest. Yes, there are stories. Men who tried to enter kingdoms through their latrines. The ultimate indignity, to be killed by a man crawling out of your own waste. And yet, you go. Every morning, every night, you balance on cold stone, you clench, you curse the wind, you pray your foot doesn't slip. But it will. Eventually, it always does. One wet stone, one moment of distraction, and suddenly, your face meets centuries of humanity's worst decisions. The cold seeps into your teeth, your eyes, your memory. And the day hasn't even started. You haven't brushed. You haven't eaten. But you survived the toilet. That in this world is victory. Now it's time for breakfast. If you thought things were about to get better, you're still thinking like a modern human. This is not the hour of omelets or coffee. There is no scent of bacon, no toaster ticking, no gentle clink of ceramic. There is fire, smoke, and a bowl. Inside the bowl is pottage. It's not quite food, it's more an edible idea. It's brown, sometimes gray, always hot, and never fresh. Imagine a soup where every ingredient tells a story, and none of them are happy. There are grains, boiled past reason, some roots chopped badly with a dull blade, a carrot if you're lucky, a rat bone if you're not. And it's all been boiling day after day, week after week, in the same pot. New ingredients are added, old ones are not removed. It's not cooking, it's continuity. You sit by the hearth, a ring of soot around your fingernails. You eat from a wooden bowl with a wooden spoon. The taste doesn't change. It's earthy. It's soft. It's survival. No one talks. No one smiles. You chew because you must. The bread is older than your child. It's stone hard, made from barley and bits of whatever could stretch the flour. Bark, straw, even sawdust. Teeth chip on it. Jaws grow sore, but it fills your stomach. And in a place like this, a full stomach is hope, because you don't know what the day holds. Maybe a plague will come. Maybe a night will ride through and claim your son. Maybe your Lord will raise the tax, or the grain will spoil, or the rats will bite your sleeping baby. But right now, your belly is warm, and sometimes in this world, that's enough. So you wipe your mouth with your sleeve. You rise slowly, the fire still licking your knees, and you step outside, into the wet, into the stink, into the 14th century. The pottage bowl sits steaming gently, and behind you, a wooden bucket waits for tomorrow. You'll be back. The morning air hits you like a wet cloth. Not cold, not fresh, just damp, heavy. You step outside and the ground sucks at your shoes, soft with mud and old waste. The sky is gray again, but not the poetic kind. Just dull, like an overused rag stretched above the earth. The street groans awake. A dog barks with no purpose. Somewhere, a man coughs, deep and rattling, like he's pulling up centuries of soot from his lungs. Smoke snakes from a few chimneys, but even that smells wrong. Wood is scarce. People burn anything they can find. Dried manure, old shoes, scraps of moss-covered timber. The smell clings to everything. Your clothes, your skin, even your thoughts. This is a village in 14th century Europe, and it's alive in the way a wound festers. A child runs barefoot through the muck, her face already streaked with dirt, her eyes too old. She laughs, not because anything is funny, but because laughter is the only thing that still comes for free. She disappears down a crooked alley where the walls lean in like they're tired of standing. You glance up at the wooden beams above you. Every building seems ready to fall, bowing with age, groaning with mildew. Rain has no mercy here. It seeps in, cracks the plaster, feeds the rot. The rich live with stone. The rest of you live with surrender. And still there's work to be done. If you're a man, your hands are already calloused from last season. You've got a field to tend. Not yours, of course. It belongs to a lord whose name you know, but face you don't. You pay him with sweat, with barley, with chickens, with your pride. And if you don't pay, well, the stocks are always empty by morning. You trudge down the lane, past a well with a crank that squeals like it's alive, past an old woman hunched over a basket of turnips that look like they've already been eaten once, past a drunk who hasn't moved since last night, his face crusted with dried vomit and rain. No one looks twice. Near the edge of the village, the ground changes. More open, more green, but still bruised by winter. That's where the fields lie, the ones you'll spend your day bleeding into. You grip your wooden hoe, splintered and worn, and you begin. Dig, lift, drop, repeat. It's not just soil beneath your feet. It's bone. It's broken glass. It's things better left unidentified. Every village has its secrets. Some buried deep. Some just under the moss. You work until your shoulders ache, until your nails fill with black grit. There's no water break, no shade, just the sun if it shows itself, and the wind, cruel, sharp, and uninterested in your suffering. Sometimes you talk to the man next to you, if he still has a tongue. You exchange no pleasantries, just curses, gossip, rumors of war, famine, or ghosts in the woods. Lately, the stories have changed. They say a merchant's boy went missing last week, vanished right off the trail. Some say wolves took him. Others whisper darker things, things with eyes too high off the ground, things that leave no tracks. But talking gets you nowhere. So you dig, you sweat, you wait for the bell. Not a clock. Those don't exist here. A bell. Rusted, cracked, but still loud enough to signal a pause in your misery. When it rings, you don't cheer, you just stop. You walk back toward the village, knees trembling, stomach hollow again. You pass the chapel. Old stone, choked in ivy, its doors open but never warm. A priest inside mutters Latin to no one. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. Faith is a strange thing here. Everyone has it. No one trusts it. Back home, there's no warm meal waiting. Just more pottage. Still the same pot. Still the same mystery. You eat it in silence. Someone cries nearby. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe your own wife. You don't ask. There's no energy for it. Instead, you stare at the fire and think about tomorrow. Will the weather hold? Will your child make it through the cough that's turned to blood? Will the bread ration last until market day? The sun begins to sink, not that it ever fully rose. You stretch out beside the hearth, watching smoke coil into the rafters. You scratch at your scalp. Something moves in your hair. A louse, or something worse. You sigh, not out of frustration, but ritual. And as the village falls back into darkness with only candlelight flickering behind broken shutters, you wonder, is this life or just waiting for death with breaks in between? Somewhere outside a raven calls, not once, but twice. And you remember what they say, that the dead don't stay buried here. Not really. They walk, they whisper, they watch. But that's for another night. For now, you close your eyes, and you dream of bread that doesn't break your teeth, and toilets that don't fight back. Sleep tight. Morning again. Not that it feels any different. In this world, time doesn't pass in moments. It passes in aches. The hearth has gone cold. The embers gave up sometime in the night. You're shivering now, but not because the cold is new. It's because it never truly leaves. It seeps into you, like guilt, like rot. There's movement outside, boots in the mud, low voices. You rise slowly. Your knees argue with you. Your back curses your name. The floor creaks and you remember. Wood this old always makes noise. It remembers every footstep, every death. You push open the crooked door and step into another day. The smell hits first. The sour brew of waste, smoke, and livestock. Someone's already emptied their bucket. It puddles in the corner of the road, steaming faintly in the early chill. A child splashes through it with bare feet. She doesn't flinch. No one ever does. Your neighbor nods at you. He has no teeth left, just gums and memories. He says nothing, just nods. That's how men speak here. With gestures, with tired eyes, with silence. There's a gathering near the chapel. You walk over not because you care, but because it's something different. Anything different. The crowd murmurs. You hear one word whispered again and again like a prayer or a curse. Witch. She's kneeling in the mud. Hair tangled like ivy, dress torn, wrists bound in rough rope. The priest stands over her, eyes narrow, voice sharp with holy fury. He's holding a wooden cross like a weapon. She's shaking but not crying. They say she cursed a child, that he coughed, then died, that he turned blue and cold and never opened his eyes again. They say she walks in the forest at night, that animals follow her, that milk sours in her presence. They say a lot of things. You stand there watching. You don't speak. You don't blink. You don't know if she's guilty. You don't care. You're just grateful it isn't you this time. A cart arrives, wooden, splintered, pulled by a mule that looks half dead. They throw her in it like meat. The crowd disperses. No one cheers. No one dares. She'll burn, probably, or drown, or hang. And the rain will fall tomorrow, and the pigs will rut in the ashes, and life will keep going. You walk away. Back to your work, back to the fields, back to digging through earth that never gives enough, and sky that never blesses. The sun rises a little higher, and the day grows warmer, but not better. Sweat stings your eyes. Flies find your back. A blister opens on your palm, and you keep digging. Because what else is there? You think about food, about the pot. The same pot, always the same pot. Sometimes you dream of spice, of sweetness, of flavor, but you've never tasted it. Only heard the stories from passing soldiers or traders with teeth like pearls and coins stitched into their cloaks. To you, food is survival, not pleasure, never pleasure. You pause when the bell rings, noon maybe, or close enough. You sit under a twisted tree near the edge of the field. Someone else joins you. An old man. His face is a map of everything this place has done to him. Wrinkles carved by sun, lines etched by famine. He doesn't talk either. You share a chunk of bread that could crack a skull. You break it with effort, not grace. He nods, you nod. And you eat in silence, because chewing takes energy, and words feel heavy here. The wind shifts. You smell rain. Rain means trouble. Not cleansing. Never that. It turns the road into a swamp. It leaks through your roof. It seeps into the floor, into your bones, into your lungs. You rise again. The hoe finds your hand. You go back to digging. By evening, your hands are swollen, your feet numb, your stomach growling with a hunger that never leaves. Not really. It's just quieter sometimes. You return home. Your house leans more than it did yesterday. The door creaks louder. The bucket's full again. You ignore it. Inside, the fire struggles. Smoke curls along the beams. Your wife sits near it, rocking a bundle. A baby, maybe. Or a body. You don't ask. She doesn't look up. You sit down. Reach for the pot. Same stew. Same wooden spoon. Outside, thunder. The storm is coming. Inside, silence. But it's not peace. It's just the sound of nothing left to say. And somewhere, far beyond the village, beyond the fields and forests and forgotten graves, the world spins on, unaware that you were ever here. Night does not fall here. It seeps. It slithers in through the cracks in the walls, curls beneath the door, and settles into the space between your ribs like a wet cloth. There is no ceremony in it, no gentle twilight, only the sudden awareness that light is gone. You sit by the hearth, what's left of it. The flame is weak tonight, the wood too damp, the straw too moldy. You cup your hands around it like you're holding a secret. Your wife has stopped rocking. The bundle hasn't moved in hours. The baby, or what's left of the baby, is still and silent. The kind of silence that echoes. She doesn't cry. She just stares. You want to say something. You really do. But what words are left for this kind of emptiness? So you rise, and you walk outside. The rain has come, and it has come without mercy. It pounds the rooftops like war drums. The street is already a river. You step into it barefoot. There's no point fighting it. Your boots are soaked anyway. The night smells like smoke and sewage and iron. Somewhere a pig screams. Somewhere else, laughter. High, shrill, almost inhuman. You're not sure who's making it. You don't want to find out. You pass the chapel. The priest is gone. The doors are open, swinging in the wind like broken wings. You see the flicker of a single candle inside, and then nothing. You keep walking. You don't know why. The village looks different at night, like it's alive, like it's watching. Windows glow faintly, as if behind them things wait. Not people. Shadows move wrong. They stretch where they shouldn't. And then you see her, the woman from the cart, the accused, the witch. She's standing by the well, her dress soaked, her hair plastered to her face. Rope burns circle her wrists like jewelry. Her eyes find yours. She smiles. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. You freeze. Your breath fogs the air. Your heart stumbles in your chest. She turns, slowly, and disappears into the woods behind the village. You should go back. You should shut the door, bar the windows, pretend the world ends at your doorstep. But something pulls you forward. You follow, past the well, past the boundary where the trees begin to close in like ribs around a secret. The woods here are older than the village, older than the chapel, older than names. Branches claw at your face, mud pulls at your legs. The darkness here is not just absence of light, it's a presence. It pushes against you, heavy and thick, like water. And then you see it, a clearing. In the center, a stone, carved, worn by centuries of rain and whispers. Symbols you don't recognize, though they feel familiar, like a word on the tip of your tongue. She's there, kneeling. She's humming. Not a tune you know, not something of this world. It's low, vibrating, like the earth is singing through her. You step closer. She stops. And without turning, she speaks. "They won't survive the winter," she says. Her voice is raw, cracked, ancient. Your child, the baker's wife, the old man with the cough, the cow, the barley, all of it, gone. You want to speak, to ask how she knows, to beg her for help, but your throat won't open. She stands slowly, her face pale in the stormlight. "But you," she whispers, "you'll remember." She walks toward you, hand outstretched, palm up. There's something in it, something small, wrapped in cloth. You reach for it, without meaning to. Your fingers close around it, and then, nothing. The woods vanish. The rain is gone. You're back in your home, by the hearth, the flame now nothing more than a red thread in the dark. The bundle is gone. So is your wife. Only silence remains. And in your hand, the cloth, still warm, still damp. You unwrap it slowly. Inside, a tooth. Tiny, human. You stare. You don't breathe, because you understand now. You weren't meant to stop her. You were meant to witness. And winter has only just begun. You don't sleep. You sit in the dark, the cloth still clutched in your hand, the tooth now cold against your palm. The wind moans through the cracks in the walls like a voice trying to form a word, but never quite making it. Every now and then, the fire pops softly, the final breath of damp wood surrendering to the embers. Outside, the rain has slowed, but the night is still alive. You can feel it pressing against the world, like something just beneath the surface. Waiting. Your wife is gone. No footsteps, no sound of the door, just gone, as if she dissolved into the smoke. You could tell yourself it was a dream, that the woods, the woman, the tooth, all of it, was a fevered vision, born from starvation and rot. But the pain in your palm is real. The cloth is still damp. You haven't moved in hours, but your heart hasn't slowed once. Eventually the sky starts to change, not lighten but shift. A deep blue softens the edges of the village, and the roosters begin to cry out as if nothing's changed. But everything has changed. The morning smells different, like ash. You open your door. The village is quiet, not sleepy. Quiet in the way graveyards are. People move, but slowly. Their eyes are swollen, their faces pale. You realize something's happened. You walk toward the square. A small crowd has gathered, all facing the same direction, the chapel. It's gone. Not crumbled, not broken. Gone. Blackened stones are all that remain, twisted into themselves like they melted. Charred wood juts up like broken fingers. The cross, bent in half, face down in the mud. No fire was seen, no smoke, no alarm. Just this smoldering ruin. The priest is gone too. You glance around, expecting panic, screaming, blame. But there's only silence. No one speaks. No one moves closer. They stand at the edge of the square like children watching the remains of a monster, one they've been told doesn't exist. You turn and walk home. Every step feels heavier. The tooth in your hand burns like frost. Inside, you don't speak. You just sit. No one comes to your door. No one checks in. And by nightfall, it becomes clear. Your wife is not coming back. That night, you bury the tooth, not because you know what it is, not because you believe it will help, but because it's the only ritual you have. You dig behind the house, into soil that smells like old blood and broken promises, and you press the cloth into the earth like it's a secret. You cover it with shaking hands. You don't mark the spot. You don't pray. You just bury, and then you wait. Days pass. The rain continues off and on, like a conversation you're not allowed to hear. The mud gets deeper. The streets become almost impassable. Livestock start to disappear. First a goat, then a pig, then 2 cows from the edge of the village. People mutter, but no one accuses. They all remember what happened to the woman. They remember the fire that didn't burn until after she was gone. The baker dies next. Not from plague or fever, but something quieter. He simply collapses by his oven. His eyes open but empty, as if he saw something no one else did. His apprentice finds him cold, arms wrapped around a loaf of bread so hard it had split the wood beneath it. No one asks questions. They bury him in the graveyard behind the ruins of the chapel. The grave is shallow. The dirt is wet. There's no priest to say the words, and no one volunteers. Then the old man, the one who used to share your bread under the twisted tree. You find him yourself one morning, face down in his field. His hands still clutching the hoe, now buried in a bed of dead roots. He looks peaceful, almost, like he laid down to rest. But his mouth is full of soil, packed tight. No one put it there. You don't report it. You just walk away. Because now you understand. Something is unraveling. Something has been turned loose. The village begins to rot faster. Pottage turns sour overnight. Bread molds even in the oven. The well water starts to smell of metal, of iron, of blood. Children don't laugh anymore. The girl who used to splash in the waste puddles doesn't leave her house. You don't see smoke from her chimney. You don't hear crying. Just silence. You pass homes and feel watched, not from behind curtains, but from the walls themselves, from the very wood and stone. One night you hear a voice outside your window, low, Familiar. You don't look. The next day, the window is cracked. The frame split open like something pried it apart. There are footprints in the mud. Bah. Small. You leave it alone. The village tries to pretend, tries to hold a market day. 3 stalls open. No one buys anything. The bread is hollow inside. The carrots are soft. A hen lays a single egg, blood red. No one eats it. People start to leave, silently. A family disappears every few days. Their homes remain, doors swinging in the wind, hearths cold. No notes, no bodies. You think about leaving too, but where would you go? The forest is thicker now. The path out of town feels different, overgrown, too dark even at noon. The trees lean together, whispering. No one comes down the road anymore. It's like the world has forgotten this place, or chosen to. Then one morning it happens again. The chapel ruins are gone. This time, not just burned, gone. Flat earth, no stones, no grave markers, just a patch of wet grass that wasn't there yesterday. And you realize the tooth you buried is gone too. You dig. Nothing. That night you dream, not in flashes, not in scattered moments, but fully, vividly. You see the woman again, the accused, the witch. She stands in a place that is not quite the forest, not quite the village, somewhere in between. The stone is behind her, glowing faintly. She's not alone. Your wife is beside her. Her eyes are closed. Her hands are blackened with soot. She's humming now, the same low, pulsing hum from before. You want to scream, you want to run. But the woman on the witch looks at you and smiles. You remember, she says. Good. The dream ends with a whisper. Not from her, from beneath the earth. A voice like cracked stone and frozen breath. Winter remembers too. You wake, soaked in sweat. The house is cold, the hearth is dead, the air is too still. You rise, walk to the door. Open it. The village is silent, but on every doorstep, something waits. A cloth bundle, wrapped tight, damp, familiar. You don't open yours. You don't need to. You already know what's inside. Because now, you understand. The dead don't haunt. They return to feed the earth, to finish what was left undone. And winter is only just beginning to speak. The bundle sat untouched. No one dared to move them. Morning came, but no one opened their doors. The sun, hidden again behind a sheet of gray, offered no warmth, no comfort. It simply lit the village in a dull haze, just enough to see what you didn't want to. Each doorstep had one, some large, some small, some wrapped in cloth torn from a child's blanket, others in coarse blood-stained wool. No names, no markings, just a silent gift from something that didn't need to be understood. You stood in your doorway staring at yours. The cloth hadn't moved. It was still damp, still heavy. The same kind of heavy you feel in your chest when you know something is wrong but can't explain why. The kind of heavy that isn't about weight, it's about knowing. Across the road, a woman finally emerged. She was the cobbler's wife. Or had been. He was gone now. One of the first to vanish, leaving behind only a hammer and a pair of boots too small for anyone left in town. She walked slowly toward her bundle, arms stiff at her sides like her body was already halfway to the grave. She bent down, picked it up, paused, then screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain or grief. It was something else. A sound not meant for human throats. Something primal. Something ancient. Doors slammed shut. Curtains snapped closed. Her scream echoed through the streets, bounced off the broken chimneys, bled into the clouds. Then silence. She didn't return to her house. The bundle was gone, and so was she. By nightfall, half the village had vanished. Their bundles untouched, doors swinging open in the wind. You stayed inside, didn't speak, didn't eat. You sat by the hearth, holding your breath for no reason at all, just listening. Listening to the sounds that didn't belong, to the breathing that wasn't yours. And then the knock came, not on your door, on your wall. 3 knocks, slow, measured, from the outside. But you lived alone now, and your house was the last one at the edge of the woods. You didn't move. You didn't breathe. A 4th knock, lower, closer to the floor. You finally stood, walked toward it. Your knees shook with every step, but it wasn't fear that slowed you. It was recognition. You'd heard this knock before, long ago, when you were a child. That same rhythm, that same cold behind it. A winter knock. You pressed your ear to the wood, heard nothing. felt everything. And then silence again. You stepped outside. The air was bitter now, bitter in a way that cracked lips and curled fingers. The trees stood still, as if holding their breath. The sky bled the last light of day in streaks of dying blue and violet. Your bundle was gone. No tracks, no signs of movement, just the stain it left behind. A dark ring on the stone like something had bled through the cloth and eaten into the ground. You didn't ask questions anymore. You didn't pray. You just walked, down the path, past the ruins that used to be the chapel, past the homes now hollowed like old skulls. You walked until the village disappeared behind you, and the forest opened its mouth. You'd never gone this deep before. Most villagers didn't. There were tales of creatures that wore the faces of the missing, of trees that moved when no one watched, of songs that entered your dreams and never left. But now there was no village, no fields, no reason to stay behind. The forest welcomed you like a grave does, silently. The trees arched overhead, black ribs against a bruised sky. Moss glowed faintly underfoot, pale green and soft like something breathing. You walked for hours. Time bent. The air grew colder, then warmer, then cold again. The sky didn't change, and the wind never stopped whispering. And then you heard it. Low, faint, familiar. You followed. It led you through thorns that didn't cut, past roots that curled away from your feet, until finally you found it. The stone, the same stone from your dream, from the clearing, from the night that took everything. It was real. It stood in the center of the clearing, taller than a man, wide as a door. Symbols carved into it shimmered faintly, like frost catching moonlight. Around it the earth was soft, disturbed, dug. Shallow graves, dozens of them, open, empty. You stepped forward. The hum grew louder. It wasn't coming from the stone. It was coming from below. You knelt, pressed your hand to the soil. Warm. You dug, slowly, fingers clawing into earth that pulsed like muscle. Every handful brought up something different. A scrap of cloth, a piece of bone, a broken tooth. Then a hand, pale, small, human. It gripped yours. You didn't scream. There was no fear left, only recognition. You pulled, and from the earth a face emerged. It wasn't your wife. It wasn't the witch. It was you. Your own face, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, asleep, or dead. You staggered back. The body slumped into the soil like it had been waiting to be found. And the stone, it spoke, not in words, but in feeling, memory, regret, hunger. This was not a burial ground. It was a womb, and it was giving birth to something old. You turned, and behind you, the villagers, every one of them. The missing, the vanished, standing, silent, watching. Their eyes were black as ash, their mouths sewn shut with root and vine. Their skin glowed faintly in the gloom, like the moss, like the stone. And they began to walk, not toward you, but into the forest, back into the world, carrying something with them. Something cold, something ancient. You wanted to run. You didn't. You stayed by the stone, and behind you, the earth moved again. Something else, waking. You turned slowly, and the forest exhaled. The season was changing. Winter had arrived. You stood there, rooted to the damp soil, the stone at your back radiating something that wasn't warmth, but presence. The forest around you felt alive, not in the way leaves rustle or animals stir, but in the way a heartbeat feels beneath a ribcage. Steady, patient, inevitable. The villagers had disappeared into the trees one by one, vanishing into the gloom as if they were being swallowed by the earth that once buried them. Their silence lingered like fog. You didn't follow. You couldn't. Something in your legs refused to move, as though the roots beneath the ground had curled around your ankles and decided you belonged here now. The clearing began to change. The air turned thicker, heavier. The moss at your feet pulsed faintly, casting off a pale green glow that lit your face from below, giving everything a half-dead sheen. The stone behind you trembled, not enough to shake the ground, but enough for your bones to feel it, like it was breathing, like it was remembering. Then came the sound. Not a voice, not a language, but a low groaning hum that resonated from within the stone itself. A chorus of centuries, like all the forgotten voices buried beneath this place, had begun to stir at once. You felt it vibrate through your chest, into your teeth. The trees leaned in. The light above shrank. And in that moment, you knew. You were no longer standing in the forest. You were standing in the threshold of something far older, something far deeper. A shape moved in the tree line. At first it was a shadow, tall, wrong, fluid like smoke underwater. But then it stepped into the light. A figure, human, almost. Its limbs too long, its head slightly tilted as if curious, or listening to something you couldn't hear. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its very presence screamed in your blood, called up every ancient instinct to run. But you didn't. You couldn't. Something about it felt familiar. Then it raised its hand, slow, deliberate, and pointed at you. Your breath caught. Your knees buckled. But before you could fall, the earth caught you, soft, spongy, unnatural. Like flesh dressed in moss, you weren't being buried. You were being held, cradled. And above you, the figure stepped forward. Its face shimmered, not with light, but with movement, changing as you looked at it. For a moment, it was your wife, then your mother, then someone you never met but somehow remembered. 1,000 faces flickering over the surface of a single shape. None of them stayed. Then it knelt beside you. Its eyes were black holes, not hollow, but hungry. You couldn't look away. You didn't want to. There was something beneath those eyes, a depth that stretched past time itself. They weren't evil. They weren't good. They just were. It reached toward you. One finger, long and slender, touched your chest, right over your heart. You felt a warmth, then a pressure, then nothing at all. And then you weren't in the clearing anymore. You were in your home, or what used to be your home. The walls were gone. The roof had collapsed. The hearth was cold ash and shattered stone. But there you stood, whole, awake, alone. The village was empty, not abandoned, erased. No tracks, no sounds, no buildings. Just open fields where homes once stood, and a mist that refused to lift. The air had changed. It smelled cleaner now, somehow colder, like fresh snow before it falls. And still you felt it, that weight in your chest, where the figure had touched you. Not pain, not fear, just a knowing. You began to walk. There was no path, no signs, just the pull. A quiet tug behind your ribs, leading you across what remained of the land you once knew. You walked for hours, or days. Time no longer mattered. Hunger didn't gnaw, fatigue didn't press. The world had become a hush, a gray canvas with no sky, no sun. Eventually you saw something on the horizon, another village, different, but not. The houses stood tall, smoke curled from chimneys, laughter rose in the wind, children's voices, the clang of iron on iron. Life. You stood at its edge and watched. They didn't see you. They moved past you like you weren't there, or like they couldn't bear to see. The same rhythm of life you remembered. Pottage, firewood, coughs in the night. You stepped forward, into the square. No one stopped you. And then you saw it. A child, dirty-faced, barefoot, with eyes far too old. She watched you, just her, as if she knew. She held a doll made of straw and twine. And when you looked into her eyes, you saw the same blackness that lived beneath the figure in the forest. Not evil, not good, just endless. She smiled, and she whispered, "Do you remember?" You opened your mouth, no words came. The child turned, walked away. And from the center of the village, you heard a sound. The distant low groan of a stone waking up. You walked toward it, because that's what you do now. You remember, you carry, you witness, and winter walks with you. The stone was there again. Not in the forest this time, but in the center of the new village, bold and unhidden. It rose from the cobblestones like a tree that had been waiting just beneath the surface, patient for centuries. No one looked at it. No one acknowledged its presence. But everyone moved around it, carefully, like the way you'd avoid a sleeping dog with blood on its muzzle. You stood before it, unsure whether you were the only one who could see it, or the only one who couldn't ignore it. The symbols etched into its surface were the same, ancient, deep, They looked burned into the stone, not carved. Some glowed faintly, like coals smothered under ash, pulsing in time with your breath. And when you stepped closer, they stopped glowing. The stone fell silent, but not the world. You could hear them again, the villagers, new ones, with clean faces, fresh clothing, laughter that hadn't learned fear yet. They were beginning their day. Fires were being stoked, bread was rising, water was fetched. They didn't know, not yet. But you did. You tried to speak, to warn someone, anyone. But the moment you opened your mouth, the words vanished from your tongue, like breath stolen from your lungs. You were not meant to speak here. You were meant to watch. And as you stood there, the child reappeared, the one with the straw doll and the eyes that held too many winters. She stood at the far end of the square, staring at you. She tilted her head, not in confusion, but recognition. She knew. She raised one hand and pointed at the sky. You followed her gesture with your eyes. Above the village, the clouds were thick, swirling, wrong. Not the kind of storm that brings wind and rain, but the kind that brings stillness. A silence so deep it becomes sound. A hush that presses into your skin like a second heartbeat. Then, without warning, the air changed. You felt it. Everyone felt it. The villagers paused. The laughter faded. The iron stopped clanging. A single drop of snow fell from the sky. Just one. It landed on the stone. The symbols flared all at once, glowing a deep, angry red. Someone screamed. You turned. A woman stood near the well, pointing at something in the water. You ran to her, pushed past the forming crowd. You looked. There was no reflection. Not yours, not hers, not anyone's. Just the water, perfectly still, like black glass. And deep within it, faces, dozens of them, pressed against the inside of the well like it was a window. Men, women, children, some with mouths sewn shut, others frozen in silent screams, all staring upward. Staring at you. You stumbled back. The crowd began to whisper, then argue, then panic. Voices rising, fingers pointing, fear blooming like mold in a sealed room. And still, above it all, the snow kept falling, gently, quietly. Each flake heavier than it should have been. Each one melting not into water, but into ash. You ran, not away, not toward, just ran. Through the village, past doorways and windows that slammed shut, past faces that blurred into fear, until you found the edge. The forest. It hadn't moved, still ancient, still waiting. You stepped into it. The trees welcomed you like an old memory. You didn't hesitate. You followed a path that didn't exist yesterday. You walked until the air grew colder, the sky dimmer, and the forest thicker. And then, the clearing, again. But different. The stone was here too, of course. It always was. But this time it wasn't alone. There were others, smaller stones, dozens, maybe more. Each one glowing softly, a ring around the clearing. And in the center, a woman, kneeling, head bowed. You approached. It wasn't the witch. It wasn't your wife. It was the child. Only now she was no longer a child, her body grown, her eyes unchanged. She looked up at you, and for the first time, she spoke. You were the first, she said, but not the last. You tried to speak, but again, your mouth betrayed you. You could only listen. They will forget, she whispered. They always forget. That's how it starts. She gestured to the stones. Each one remembers a village, a place, a time, buried, lost, not gone, just returned. You looked around. There were too many to count. Each one a history erased, each one a story no longer told. And then she stood, stepped toward you, held out the doll. It was different now, wet, heavy. You took it, slowly, carefully. It bled in your hand. Straw and thread, soaked through with something thick and dark. You looked up. She was gone. So was the clearing. So was the forest. You were back in the village. But it wasn't the same. No one moved. No one spoke. They all stared at you. Every villager, every child, every pair of eyes, fixed on you. And in their gaze you saw it. They remembered now. All of them. The stone began to hum behind you. The sky cracked open above. And winter finally spoke. It didn't speak with words. Winter never does. It spoke through silence. The kind that presses into your ears until you can't hear your own breath. It spoke through cold, a sudden, cutting cold that didn't creep in gently like a draft under a door, but slammed into the village like a wall of ice. Instant, total, alive. You stood in the center of it all, doll bleeding in your hand, the villagers frozen in place, their eyes locked onto you, not blinking, not breathing, just watching. You turned slowly, feeling the air tighten around your chest, the pressure building like something ancient had just inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. The stone behind you began to glow again, brighter this time. No longer the ember red of warning, but a pale, colorless light that didn't illuminate so much as reveal. Things that had been hidden were no longer shy. Shapes flickered in the alleys, movement pulsed behind shutters, whispers crawled up the sides of houses. And then the doll moved. It twitched, just once, its little thread-wrapped limbs quivering like it remembered being something else, something living. You looked down. Blood, or what looked like blood, was running from the stitches, not dripping, pouring, a thick stream pooling at your feet, soaking the earth, painting the stones beneath you in red spirals. It didn't stop. It didn't slow. And still the villagers watched, unmoving, their faces slack, their mouths slightly open as if mid-breath or mid-scream. Then one of them moved. The child, the same girl, though now older again, face drawn, hair damp, eyes hollow like a cave no light could reach. She stepped out of the crowd and walked toward you, barefoot through the blood, her dress dragging through it without resistance. She didn't blink, didn't speak, just reached forward and touched the doll. It stopped bleeding. The silence deepened. And from the far end of the village something answered. A sound. Not a voice, not an animal, not a wind, but a sound made of many things. Bone scraping wood, ice cracking under weight, 1,000 nails on stone, and underneath it all, a low breath, drawn slowly, purposefully. Something had awakened. You turned to the child, but she was gone, vanished like smoke. In her place stood something else, tall, thin, wrapped in tattered black cloth that fluttered despite the still air. Its face was hidden beneath a hood stitched from what looked like flesh and fur. No eyes, just the shape of a mouth stretched too wide, as if forever mid-whisper. And it was watching you. The villagers dropped to their knees, all at once, every single one, heads bowed, palms pressed flat to the ground. But not you. You couldn't move. The doll in your hand was growing warm again. The figure raised one hand and pointed, not at you, at the stone. You turned. The light had changed. The symbols had rearranged themselves, slowly twisting into new patterns, runes you had never seen before, but that filled you with a strange, painful familiarity. You didn't need to read them. You remembered them, as though they had once been carved into the inside of your own ribs. The figure stepped closer. With every step, the village changed. The houses sagged, their roofs collapsing inward. Windows shattered with no sound. Doors rotted from their hinges. The ground cracked, old graves splitting open beneath the surface, though no bodies spilled out, only air, thick with the smell of wet ash and bone dust. Still, you couldn't move. The doll began to fall apart in your hand. Thread by thread, stitch by stitch, it unraveled, and inside it, something small, round, cold. A tooth, another tooth, but this time, it was yours. You felt your body shudder. Your jaw ached. Something inside you turned over as if waking up. You dropped the doll, stepped back. The ground groaned beneath your feet. The figure reached the stone, placed one long gloved hand against its surface. The entire village exhaled. The wind picked up, not from the north or west, but from below, rising from the soil itself, carrying with it whispers you couldn't understand but knew were meant for you. And then the villagers rose, slowly, all at once. Their eyes were different now, no longer dull, no longer afraid. They were empty, hollow, reflective, like mirrors polished with blood. They began to walk, past you, around you, through the village, toward the forest. And the figure followed, but as it passed you, it paused, turned its head, slowly, almost respectfully, and whispered. Just one word, witness. Then it was gone. The stone cracked. The village disappeared, and you stood alone again, but the tooth was still in your hand. And winter was not finished. Not yet. You didn't fall. You simply stopped standing. One moment you were in the village, the next you were on your knees, your hand still clutching the tooth. The air had gone still again. The earth beneath you no longer trembled. The trees no longer leaned in. The stone was gone. So were the villagers. So was the figure in black. All of it gone, but not forgotten. The clearing around you was new and ancient at once. The grass was short, but it grew from cracks in stone that had been smoothed by centuries. Trees circled you like sentries. Their bark was pale and dry, their limbs bare despite no sign of winter. Overhead, the sky was blank. No sun, no stars, just a dull, breathless gray. The silence was back. Not just a lack of sound, but something aware, something watching, something that wanted silence. You tried to speak. Nothing came. Even the wind had left. You stood, slowly. Every joint in your body ached like you'd aged 50 years in a night. Maybe you had. There were no shadows around you, no direction, no sense of time. Just a cold truth settling in your bones. There would be no going back. The tooth was warm now, and heavier. You looked down. It wasn't a tooth anymore. It was your name carved into bone. You didn't remember carving it, but you knew your own handwriting. You knew the slope of the letters, the way your fingers curled when writing in pain. And it was there, etched deeply into a surface that had no right to hold a name. A wind moved then, but not from the forest. From below, you turned. The stone had returned. Cracked down the center, glowing from within, not brightly, just enough to pulse. Like a wound still healing, or opening. You approached it carefully. Each step seemed to take longer than the last. Like the air was growing thick. Like the earth didn't want you any closer. But you got there, you always do. You pressed your hand to the stone. It was cold, yes, but not empty. It knew you, and it showed you everything. Visions, not memories, not dreams. Something older, deeper. You saw villages crumbling beneath snow that never melted. You saw mothers holding stillborn children wrapped in bloodied wool. You saw fires that would not warm. Bread that never rose. Rivers that ran backward, swollen with ash and teeth. You saw the figure again, but now it was many. Dozens, hundreds, all tall, all draped in shadows, each walking through the world like shepherds guiding something no one else could see. And behind them, stone after stone after stone. Each one rising from the ground, each one humming softly, each one claiming something that had been forgotten. You saw your own village whole again. You saw your wife, her face in the crowd, smiling, then fading. You saw yourself, younger, laughing, running, then screaming. You pulled your hand away. The stone went dark, but the air stayed heavy. Behind you, footsteps. Not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate. You turned. The girl again. Still older, her face drawn tight, her eyes now black pits rimmed with red veins. She didn't blink. "Do you know what you are?" she asked. You shook your head. "You're the bell," she said. "You ring and winter comes." You tried to step back, but your feet wouldn't move. "You thought you were a witness," she whispered, her voice low like leaves rustling in dry wind. "But you're the call." She stepped closer, reached for your hand, the one with the carved name. You remembered. That was your sin. No one is supposed to remember. She pressed your hand against your chest, and you felt it, the stone inside you, growing. It didn't hurt, not exactly. It settled, and your name, once carved in bone, began to fade, letter by letter, erased not by time, but by acceptance. She leaned in close. Her breath was warm against your ear. "The first winter was mercy," she said. "The next is truth." You blinked, and she was gone. And so was the clearing. You stood in snow, real snow, falling in soft, endless silence. All around you, a new village. One you didn't recognize. Children played, mothers cooked, dogs barked. They didn't see you. You walked among them, and the wind followed. Soft, cold, familiar. Winter had arrived, and it wore your name. Snow fell without sound. Not the kind that dances gently in the wind, but the kind that sinks. Heavy, purposeful. Each flake carried weight, not in mass, but in memory. It coated the rooftops, filled the cracks in the stone, silenced the earth. Even the air itself felt muffled, like the world had placed a hand over its own mouth. You stood in the middle of the new village, invisible, not unseen, unnoticed. People passed by you like mist, their eyes sliding past your form as if you were no more than a shadow on the edge of their vision. They laughed, they worked, they lived, just like yours had once. They didn't see the snow for what it was, but you did. You watched it gather along the edges of buildings, along windowsills and steps. It didn't melt. It clung. It reached. The longer it settled, the more it changed what it touched. Wood grew brittle. Stone cracked. The laughter in the streets grew thinner. People began to cough. Not loud, not violent, just enough to hint, just enough to start. You walked past the bakery, where the scent of rising bread failed to hide the mildew in the walls, past the well, where water had already turned to slush and flies hovered low despite the cold, past a child, drawing in the frost with a stick, shapes you recognized, even if she didn't. The same symbols that once marked the stone. She paused when you walked by. Her eyes followed you, though the rest of her body didn't move. "You're cold," she said without looking up. It wasn't a question. You stopped. She kept drawing. "You weren't always," she added. "Were you?" You didn't respond. You couldn't. She looked up at you then, eyes too bright, too still. "You're not here for us," she said. Her tone wasn't frightened. It was patient, as if she'd been waiting. "You're here for the first." You opened your mouth. Something inside you tried to speak, but the words weren't yours. "They left the door open," the voice said, soft, deep. "Yours, but not." And winter came in. The girl smiled, not with joy, but recognition. She dropped her stick, walked away, and the sky grew darker. The village didn't notice. Not yet. But the edges were beginning to fray. You saw it in the corners of buildings that shifted when no one was looking, in shadows that lingered too long, in the sudden wind that came from below the earth, not above it. You reached the square. In the center stood a statue, weathered, covered in lichen and snow, but underneath, the shape was familiar. A tall figure, hooded, face hidden. You stepped closer. At its feet, a plaque, almost too worn to read. But your eyes adjusted, and there it was. Your name, not carved, grown, raised from the stone like bone rising through flesh. The statue began to hum. A soft sound, too low for the villagers to hear, but you heard it. It rattled in your ribs, coiled behind your eyes. It wasn't music. It was a signal, a remembering. Then the snow changed. It fell faster, harder, but still without sound. The villagers noticed now. They looked up, eyes narrowing, confused, not afraid yet, just disoriented. They rubbed their arms, looked toward their homes. Doors began to shut, curtains drawn. A bell rang in the distance. Not a church bell. Something older, deeper. You knew that sound. You had heard it before. Long before this place. Long before the forest. Before even your first village. It was your bell, calling something forward. The statue cracked. A fine line down the middle. The snow fell in sheets now, not flakes. From the alleys, whispers rose, unspoken things stirring. You felt the cold behind your eyes. And then they appeared. The villagers didn't see them. Couldn't. But you did. Figures. Tall, shrouded, dozens, silent. They stood at the edges of the square, unmoving, like judges waiting for a verdict. Their hoods hung low. Beneath them, faces that were always changing. Your wife, your child, yourself. The statue cracked again. The village was fading, not dying, but peeling away, like paint soaked in time, revealing the wood beneath, the truth beneath. One by one, the lights in the homes went out. The laughter died. The buildings began to lean, to rot. Not quickly, just enough to show you what would come. One of the figures stepped forward. Its hand rose, and from the sky something fell. Not snow, ash, gray, soft, endless. The first flake landed on your shoulder. It burned cold. The figures raised their hands. And every door in the village opened at once. No one stood behind them. Only darkness. It poured out like smoke, like memory. And from the open doorways came the sound. The hum, the chant, the mourning. The wind swallowed everything. You stood still. Not because you couldn't move, but because this was your doing. You were not a messenger. You were not a witness. You were the opening, the invitation. The winter didn't come through you. It came as you, and it had just begun. You didn't feel the cold anymore. Not because it had passed, but because it had become you. The ash fell like snow, but it didn't melt. It didn't cling. It sank. Into skin, into wood, into memory. You watched it fill the streets, soft and slow, and yet everything it touched began to die. The village was quiet now, not from peace, but from deletion. Doors stood open like mouths that had forgotten how to speak. Windows reflected nothing. Even the birds were gone. The villagers stood outside their homes one by one, like sleepwalkers called by a voice they couldn't name. Their faces were blank. Not blank from shock, blank from absence. Like something had hollowed them from the inside. Their eyes were open, but they didn't blink. Their mouths moved, but they made no sound. They were remembering. The hum had grown louder. Not from the sky, not from the ground, from within. It vibrated in your jaw, behind your ribs. Each pulse a heartbeat, not yours, but the land's. The village itself had come alive, or had never died. Maybe it was never a village at all, just a stage, a copy, a test. And now it was time for the final act. The figures in the square stepped forward, slowly, gracefully. They surrounded the statue, the one that bore your name in bone, and raised their hands. You watched as they placed something at its base. A bundle, wrapped in cloth. Familiar. You stepped toward it. Each step echoed. Not in your ears, but in them. The villagers turned toward you as one. All of them. Their eyes still vacant, their bodies still. But their attention was yours. And when you reached the bundle, you hesitated. Not out of fear, out of knowing. Because once you opened it, everything would change. The last wall between who you were and what you had become would be gone. And deep down, you already knew what was inside. You knelt. The cloth was warm, damp, soft with wear. You unwrapped it slowly. And inside, a mirror, small, cracked, ringed in rust. But in its reflection, not your face, something else. Something older. Eyes like polished coal, skin pale and stretched, a mouth too wide, too quiet. It blinked and smiled. The mirror shattered. You stood, and the sky finally broke open. Not with lightning, not with thunder, with voices, thousands of them, millions, screaming and whispering at once, names, dates, places, all swallowed by time, all crying to be remembered. It poured down like rain, washing away the ash, the buildings, the illusion. The village melted. You stood alone in an open field, flat and endless, ringed by dead trees and frozen mist. In the center, the statue, still cracked, still bearing your name. You walked to it. Your body moved like it belonged to the ground now. Each step was heavier than the last, not with pain, but with purpose. You had weight now, a role. You were no longer a visitor in the cold. You were the cold. At the base of the statue, another figure waited. The girl, now fully grown. Her eyes were your eyes. Her hands, your hands. She didn't speak. She only placed her hand over your heart. And suddenly you remembered everything. Not just the villages, not just the stones. You remembered the first winter. The one that came before language, before fire, before gods. You remembered what it took. The hunger it left behind. You remembered your oath, not to protect, but to preserve. To carry the forgetting, to deliver the silence, to ensure the world never grew too loud again. She stepped back, and the field lit up. One by one, in a circle around you, stones emerged from the earth. Each with a name, each with a bundle, each with a story. Some you knew, others you'd soon visit. You closed your eyes. The wind returned, but now it bowed when it touched you. Winter no longer whispered your name. It was your name, and the world was ready to forget again. The wind didn't howl. It listened. It circled you like a loyal dog, brushing against your arms and neck with reverence, not chill. The field lay still, but not asleep, waiting. The stones around you pulsed faintly, a slow rhythm like breath. Each one marked a place you hadn't yet walked. But you would. You must. That was the oath, wasn't it? The contract inked not in blood, but in memory. The girl stood at your side. The same girl. The one who had drawn symbols in frost. Who had stared through you like she'd known you longer than you'd been alive. And maybe she had. Maybe she was part of you. Maybe she was you, back when you still had warmth in your hands and laughter in your lungs. She touched one of the stones, just lightly. It responded, a sound, a name, whispered into the air and then vanished, gone before it reached your ears, but it left a taste in your mouth. Smoke, salt, wet leaves. You had never been to that place, but you remembered it. The stone wanted you to come. She stepped aside, looked at you one last time. Her eyes weren't pleading. They were giving permission. And then she was gone. Not in a flicker, not in a blink. She simply, sun was no longer there. The world held its breath, and you took the first step. The field shifted beneath your feet, not cracked or shaken, but obedient. Each footprint opened something below. Not dirt, not stone, but memory. Moments forgotten by time itself. You walked across them like stepping stones through a river of stories long buried. With every step, you felt the weight of lives lost, of winters that had come and gone unnoticed. And then, one of the stones called louder than the rest. It rose higher than the others. Its glow deepened, pulsing with urgency. The mist around it thickened, swirling upward into a vortex that stretched toward a sky that no longer had a sun. You approached it. The closer you came, the more it pulled, not with force, with longing. You placed your hand upon it, and the field disappeared. You fell, or you descended, not through space, through time, through grief. The world turned dark, then gray, then bright, then wrong. You landed not on the ground, but in a memory not yours. A village, unfamiliar roofs, thick smoke in the air, a river, half frozen, sluggish with rot. Children barefoot in snow, men sharpening blades that would never touch war, women burying herbs in frozen soil, eyes wide with dread. They didn't see you. Of course they didn't. You were not here to be seen. You were here to observe, to mark, to begin. A child stood at the edge of the river, shivering, alone. She looked directly at you, not past you, at you, and you felt it. This one knew. She raised her hand, and the snow around her paused, mid-fall, mid-flight. Everything stilled, and in the stillness the hum returned. That soft vibration in the marrow of your bones, the sound of a world preparing to forget something precious, or something terrible. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The snow resumed. Time spun forward. You watched as the river froze completely, as sickness took the baker, then the blacksmith, then the priest. You saw the fires stop burning, not for lack of fuel, but lack of will. One by one they curled beneath blankets and never woke again. No screams, no struggle, just surrender. And you walked through it, not as a ghost, as a seal, a witness of erasure. A final page turned. And when it was done, when the last cough had faded into the rafters, you stood alone. The snow rose to your knees. The village sagged beneath it, bones cracking under the weight of forgetting. And in the center of it all, a stone, new, unmarked. You knelt, touched it, and the name appeared. Theirs, not yours. You were never meant to leave your name here. Your name was not for the stones. It was for the wind. The stone sank into the ground. The village faded, and the field returned. The wind greeted you like an old friend. You looked around. The other stones remained, waiting. Each one held a name, a time, a silence yet to be delivered. You knew what must come next. You were not tired. You were becoming. The next winter waited, and it had already begun whispering your name. The wind spoke before the sky did. It moved first, not as weather, but as intention. It circled your ankles like smoke, climbed your spine like memory. You stood in the field again, surrounded by the stones, and each one had gone quiet. For now. But you could feel it, the weight of what still waited beneath them. You weren't finished, not yet. You turned. One stone stood taller now, cracked through the middle, its surface weeping frost instead of light. It wasn't glowing, it wasn't humming, it was mourning. You walked toward it, not slowly, not cautiously, just inevitably. With every step, you remembered the rhythm, the way the world softens before it surrenders, the way people stop asking questions just before they stop breathing, the way winter never knocks, because the door is already open. The stone met your hand with warmth this time, not kindness, not welcome, just warmth, like breath inside a coffin, like the last ember before it dies. And the world changed again. You were no longer in the field. You were in a forest, but not the one you knew. This one was breathing. The trees pulsed, their bark slick with something that looked like sap but smelled like blood. Leaves moved without wind. Birds chirped, but not in song, in warning. The sky above was black, not night black, smoke black, cloudless and suffocating. In the center of the woods, a house, small, crooked, made of stone and grief. And inside, you already knew what waited. You stepped through the threshold without touching the door. It opened for you. The air inside was thicker than outside. It clung to your clothes like damp wool. The hearth was cold. The chairs were empty. And yet, someone had been here. The table was set. 2 bowls of pottage, one still steaming, one left unfinished. You stepped closer. The chair beside the steaming bowl pulled itself back an inch. Invitation, memory, ritual. You didn't sit. You walked deeper, through the door in the back, down the steps that shouldn't have existed, and into a cellar that breathed. It pulsed with something buried, beneath the floorboards, beneath the dirt, beneath time. You knelt, pressed your palm to the soil, and listened. It didn't speak in language. It didn't scream. It remembered. And in that remembering, you saw it all. The boy who starved in this cellar, too ashamed to beg. The mother who boiled grass when the bread ran out. The father who locked the door from the inside. They were never buried, because no one came looking. They were forgotten, and the forest grew around that forgetting. You stood. The air was colder now. The steps behind you were gone. The house above gone. Only the earth remained. You reached into your chest, not metaphorically, not dreamlike. Literally, your fingers curled around something hard, something sharp, just beneath your ribs. You pulled. Another stone. Small, black, etched with a single name. Yours. You dropped it into the soil. It sank instantly. The cellar vanished. You stood again in the forest. But now it was winter, and it had your shape. The trees bowed as you walked. The snow fell only where you stepped. The world no longer resisted you. It made space for you. Because you weren't visiting this place. You were the one who made it. And now it was time. Time to return. Time to carry silence to the next doorstep. Time to bring forgetting to the next fire. You turned your face to the wind, and it whispered, "Only one more." The final stone was waiting. Not glowing, not calling, just present. Still. It stood taller than the rest now, jagged at the top, its surface dulled by ash and time. All the others had pulsed with light or hum, signs of memory ready to rise. But not this one. This stone was quiet because it already knew. It didn't need to ask. It had seen what came before. And now, it was your last task. You approached without fear. Fear had long since abandoned you. What was left was duty. Not the kind written in scrolls or carried by bloodlines. This was older. The kind forged in the cold places of the world. The kind whispered through your bones every time someone forgot a name they once loved. You placed your hand on the stone, and everything stopped. No wind, no sound, no breath. Then, you opened your eyes, and you were home. But it wasn't the same. Your village, your road, the crooked houses, the bent chimney of the baker's cottage, the old well with the iron handle, the rickety fence you used to lean on when your back ached from the fields. It was all here, untouched, but empty. The home stood, but no smoke curled from the hearths. No footprints marked the snow. No voices rose in the wind. Everything was exactly where it had been, the day it died. You walked the familiar path, past your door, past the chapel that once held warmth in its stones, past the place where the woman, the so-called witch, had knelt in the mud. You reached the square, and there it was. Your first stone, whole again, not cracked, not glowing, just waiting. You stepped close, and this time it spoke, not in language, not in sound, but in recognition. It welcomed you, not as a visitor, not as a witness, as the keeper. And in that moment, the village breathed again. The windows blinked open. The doors creaked gently on their hinges. Shadows moved behind curtains. The wind returned, not cold, not harsh, but gentle, grateful. You had brought silence, and in that silence, the world could rest. You knelt by the stone, and for the first time, You closed your eyes. You listened. To the sound of winter settling. To the weight of names being laid to rest. To the truth that forgetting isn't cruelty. It's mercy. You became still. The snow fell gently over your shoulders. And somewhere far away, another village began to whisper. Another name was forgotten. Another fire went out. And winter walked again. Thank you for walking with me through this dark, quiet journey. If this story moved you, take a moment, sit with the silence, let it settle. And when you're ready, dim the lights, tell someone, or just share this with a friend who's not afraid to feel the cold. And let me know where you watched from. I'll be here, listening, for the next whisper, for the next winter.